without further ado, it is my pleasure to invite our panelists for the last panel. Professor Krzysztof Dołowy from Warsaw University of Life Sciences. Andrzej Dominiczak, Chairman of Polish Humanist Association. And Professor Jan Hartman from Krakow University. And the topic of this panel is critical thinking in the digital era. Is smart technology making people smarter? We are going to discuss this topic in a very vast manner, I hope. As the aim of this panel is to have some philosophical discussion on whether people nowadays are as smart as the previous generations used to be, or smarter or less. Is the technology somehow helping us to become more intelligent? Is it helping us to be as we would like to be in modern societies, well informed about everything, conscious about everything that's going on? Or it is the opposite, we are getting so much information that we are unable to filter it, and people have no idea whatsoever about what's going around them. So that's the topic we are going to explore. So we will start with our three guests giving a short speech on the topic, and we will start with Andrzej Dominiczak. Okay, so we will start with Professor Dołowy, who has a PowerPoint presentation to show us.
Hello, ladies and gentlemen. I am a professor of university. I need to have a presentation. If not, all my students will fall asleep immediately. So I am trying to do the same on you. Well, for scientists, I'm a scientist in hard science, and critical and thinking are two words which would require definition, but I'm not going to do it. And thinking is something what is going in our brains, and we think it is obvious, but it's not. Maybe the next slide. Oh, it is next slide. And Daniel Kahneman, who is a Nobel Prize winner and who was working like 40, 50 years on decision making, he found out that in our brains there are two systems. One is fast, one is slow. Of course, it is simplification, but it is good simplification to give you that's what I want to say. The next one, fast way is unconscious. It usually takes less than a second. We do not need to put effort to get brain thinking and solving problems, and we are often unaware that that something was done in our brain. Now, the slow system requires a minute or maybe a week, because it depends on the problems we are solving, but definitely is not slow, and it requires a lot of effort, and we do not want to use it. Usually we are saying, oh, it is so complicated, come on, I am not interested. Okay, some of you may think that there is no such a way that we are not thinking, we are not aware we are thinking. So let me give you two examples. A fly is coming to your ear. I mean, if you are not wearing glasses, it would be especially painful if it would hit your eye and you are immediately blinking. Now, if it is going through system 1. If it would go to system 2, it would be like that. Oh, something is coming to my eye. Probably it is a fly and it's going to hit my eye. What should I do? Maybe I will close my eyelid. Okay. You think I was exaggerating? No, there's half more minute of thinking, brain thinking, before it would do the trick. Our other example with blinking, you are driving a car after terrible rain, and cars on left and right are pouring streams of water over your car, and such a stream is hitting your window. What you do, you close your eyes. You mean your conscious brain say, oh, close your eye because you would get wet. It would be stupid. Of course it's automatic decision. And this automatic decision comes from, next please, comes from our evolutionary past, and we share it with practically all the animals. This system one allows us, humans, animals without claws and paws, to survive. We see the movement there. Maybe it is a tiger, so we better go the other way. So system one is always alert, always giving us information that something might go wrong. Of course, system one is also we are using system one, or system one is using us, saying, oh, there is a rat, kill it, you would have a lunch, or is there anybody interested to have a sex with me now? So this is system one working all the time, and working, say, 99% of the time. We don't have time to use system two, because we must all the time be alert that something might go wrong. Now, in civilization, especially after 19th century, people usually, not all, but a considerable part of people do not need to work all the day to have enough food to survive. Do not be afraid of animals which could kill us, because we kill them all. And we are not afraid whether there would be we could freeze at night, because we have cozy homes. So system one is not using all the resources, or at least it was not using all the resources we got in our brain, and time could be devoted to system two things: art, science, literature, whatever. And it was going like that to the end of 20th century, and then there was could we have another one? Smartphone technology. Now, smartphone technology is using exactly that, what is system one. All the time you're looking, I mean, not you, I hope, not all of you. System one is using that free power of our system one to check what's going on. Oh, he said that. Oh, what he or she is dressed in. And all the time now there are a lot of people addicted to the smartphones, especially young people. Smartphones, I mean also computer screen. Playing computer games, it is similar way. Now, also they are losing ties with other people. A whole world is that what they have in hand, and nothing else exists. And 70 or 80 years ago, Albert Einstein, may I have the next slide, just fear of that, said, I fear today that technology will surpass our human interaction. The world will have a generation of idiots. Of course, we are not talking about all the people, but there is a lot of youngsters now who are living in this digital technology who definitely are idiots. And some of them are coming to my lectures at university, and I am in difficult position to talk to them even. Okay, may I have the next slide? Let's go to the second system two. Now, system 2 is trying to solve difficult problems, different problems, difficult for a person. And this requires resources, it requires time. It should be, the person should be free to think. Nothing was going on around him and he is working on solving the problem. Now, to solve the problem, we need to have an input of important information. And I'm not saying true information, good information, let's put it good information. Because as some of you maybe are computer specialists, and you know that if you put bad information into the computer program, you will get bad answers. Now, computer specialists have a short for it, shit in, shit out. So the fundamental question is whom ask or where to find good information to solve the problem. And in the past, we were usually, I mean in old past, we were founding a new problem. We are usually asking elders. Maybe in their long life they met such a problem, they heard about such a problem, and they know how to solve it. Now, if not, we are giving our freedom of thinking to our political or religious leaders. And we are saying, okay, our chief brought us here, and there are so many tigers around, it is his problem to get us out from here safely. Okay, so usually we are not trying to solve the difficult problem, not knowing important information. Now, books were, since we learn how to write and we learn how to print books, then books start to be important source of information. Are the information in books always good? The answer is obviously not. But the writers of the book were selected. Because the time they were spending of writing a book, somebody had to support them. And it was a king or a nobleman or something, somebody rich. So they were selected because they were delivering something people want to have. So the information in books were better than in general public. Now, of course, that what changed or shaped our civilization are experimental science laws. Experimental science started 1600s, then grew 1700s, and mid of 1800s. It became very powerful. We have fertilizers, dyes, medicines, and we also could build powerful weapons and huge constructions. Now humans start to control the environment. And if there was a problem, new plague or something, we were asking scientists to solve it. Now, not all problems could have been solved by scientists, but it was a possibility. However, okay, internet revolution changed it completely. Now we do not have a problem where to get information, but which information is good or bad, true or false. It democratizes access to information, but produces a lot of problems. How to recognize good information? You can put your problem in a Google and read 3 from a top. It's not a good way to find which one is true. You can have a number of likes in Facebook or under some article in net, and the more likes probably it is, the better. It is not that good. We have some other fellow rationalists who solve to write the fact that some view is widespread does not constitute any proof that it is not altogether absurd. if we consider that most humanity is simply stupid, it is likely to be expected that generally prevailing beliefs will be ridiculous rather than sensible. Now, of course, it was always like that. Maybe internet really make more fools because you are reading this two from a top and thinking, oh, I know everything about the problem. But to make my final point, I would go to the other book of Talmud, which is saying there are 4 types of men, 3 good and 1 bad. A wise man who knows he is wise, it is good type. We can learn from him. A wise man who thinks he is fool, it is also good. But we should first encourage him, and then we can learn from him. There is a third good type, fool, who knows he is fool. That is okay. He wouldn't interfere, or if he wants, we could teach him. But there is one bad type. This is a fool who thinks he is wise. And Talmud suggested, let us avoid him. It is the only way. Unfortunately, internet makes probably more fools who think they are wise, but it is not the worst part of it. They were able to count themselves. There are a lot of fools who think that they are wise, and not only they could influence elections, they could also run for office. They are so popular, and sometimes they win. So this is my final point, that modern technology makes a lot of people fool because they are too busy to think, and that internet produces a lot of fools who think they are wise. Thank you.
Professor Jan Hartman.
Oh, really? Yeah. Is it working? It's glitching rare. Thank you very much. Well, this is the second panel without any female participants. If you like, I can be a woman tonight representing this half of humanity. And if you don't like, I remain male.
But you did have a female in the previous one.
I wasn't aware. I can just right now. Well, I have a special honor to disagree with Professor Dołowy, and probably with Mr. Dominiczak too. He told me what he's going to say today. Myself, I'm upon my personal experience with myself and with my students, very happy with all these gadgets, with internet, with all these digital technologies that we were provided some 20 years ago, and that we are still learning how to use them. We are at the very beginning of the new digital technology era, and making far-going conclusions about the possible impact of these technologies on the humanity, on our intellectual skills, is just unscientific. It's too early. We need much more time. The technology is under very energetic development. We can predict what is going to come in near future, and it is quite promising. For the time being, it seems to me, from my personal and subjective point of view, myself and probably most of my mates, colleagues and friends, we are much wiser now and much more intelligent than 20, 30 years ago. because using new technologies makes us more fit. It provides us with everyday exercises with using equipment, hardware equipment, and software equipment, meaning programs or applications. This is my and others' everyday brain massage, and it works. These are very intelligent products of human wisdom, and we deal with them every day. At the same time, we have full access to the well-structured, Professor Dołowy, very well-structured information. You must be really very stupid to be unable to select and to tell bad information from the good one. The selection is easy to attain, and criticism is easy to learn because we are assisted by the programs we use, and it's quite easy to get informed, much easier now when you only stay vis-à-vis your computer than before when you stayed vis-à-vis your teacher or university professor. I don't teach students about facts because I'm always scared that someone would check under the table what really the fact is. So I avoid spreading information. It makes me focusing on thinking and processing information and data, because data are for free, accessible to everyone. They are easy to check and they are quite precise. So in this new situation, we are all together at the same stage, able to discuss things almost on the professional level, because all of us are provided with scientifically proven information. Even medium level education, which is very widely accessible now, enables intelligent people to be parts of competent discussions. It has never been the case. This is the new form of democracy, I would say intellectual democracy. Of course, using internet is very easy and it makes us a bit lazy, and many of us are very superficial while dealing with so easily accessible information. Myself, I'm also very lazy. But when you are really interested and you want to get deeper into the problem, it's always possible. And all these young people whom we often reproach of being so idiot and superficial, when they really get interested, they easily learn that knowledge is multi-layers, that knowledge is deep, that knowledge is interesting, deep and far-going, large and complex. And they learn while surfing internet what does it really mean to be up-to-date, to be professional, to be a specialist. This is an experience that every user of the internet, every intelligent user has. And this experience is much more impressive than average interaction with an average teacher. So, for instance, if my student would like to know what it is to be a good philosophy professor, they have much more chances than just attend my lecture. They have a chance to go into the YouTube service and listen to much better lectures provided by much better philosophers than myself. It is democratic, it is intelligent, it is promising. So I'm very happy to be a part of this new era of so spread, so far-going, so democratic, so widespread competence and intelligence. And I feel much safer having access to all sorts of well-selected, well-structured information, because information gives you power, control over yourself, control over your life, gives you share in the social democratic life, give you some capital, gives you some resources when you have to deal with more powerful social and political instances. As citizens, as employees, as students, we are just stronger having access to the internet, having access to all these huge resources. And we have much more reasons to be proud of the humanity. Since we have access to the internet, and since we have been observing how the internet and all this digital culture is developing, we are getting more and more proud of ourselves as the humanity. We see thousands of people who are much more intelligent and competent than we could predict, that we could suspect. And it makes us safer. It gives us more security, more feeling of self-control. Perhaps to some extent it is fake, because the majority is not that clever. That is right, but we have an evidence that there are thousands of people whom you would never get acquainted with, who are wiser, more educated, more intelligent than these people whom we know from the TV and from the political life. And it's really good. And the future is going to give us more, even more advantages from the digital technologies, because probably we are going to integrate the machines, the computers, the chips, with our bodies and with our sensual structures, which is going to enable all of us to be in an instant, not intermediated, technologically intermediated contact with information and the symbolic life in general. So imagine that you can control the content of the internet, meaning the content of the whole human symbolic production, from the level of your thoughts, from the level of your senses, directly. It would make, and it will probably make, all of us really powerful, really intelligent, and really equal to other people. And imagine in addition that some new entities, transhuman, post-human, or just non-human, would emerge in the world. How it is nice to think that in the future we are going to not to be alone in the world as we are now. How is it nice to know that some other entities are to some extent or in some respects better, wiser, more intelligent, more empathic, more moral than ourselves. This power that we encounter now, or that we can at least predict for ourselves in the near future, that power to overpass, to transgress our condition, human condition, our limits, this power to produce something overhuman, it's really amazing. It's a real moral challenge, but it's also a real moral victory that is still ahead, that is still waiting for us. And I hope that some of us, at least, those who are younger in this room, will be happy and lucky to see this new era, post-human or transhuman era, and that you will enjoy being in contact with the entities that are to some extent, in some ways, better than we are, and that you will have a chance to learn how to respect and how to admire something else than the humanity. So to sum up, I look at this prehistoric era of cybernetics, as it was called 50 years ago. Prehistoric because we are at the very, very early stage of these technologies. I perceive it as a pioneer era, and I'm very proud of being part of it. We all are very lucky. We don't know what is awaiting our next generations, but we have good reasons to be very hopeful, to be very optimistic about this future. However, on the other side, it is ourselves to keep responsibility for handling this huge challenge and all dangers connected to these challenges. But we are going to manage because we are much wiser, much more responsible. We are much more aware of all possible dangers than former generations. And what is making us more responsible, more critical, more considered? Of course, these knowledge and these personal relationships that we get from the internet, from the global communicative net in which all of us we participate. So in this sense, I very much disagree with these pessimistic views, which are certainly prevailing, and perhaps it's good, but my part is to provide a balance, a counterweight to this widespread and to some extent justified pessimism. This is all from my side, and now I pass on this mic to the pessimist.
Well, I wouldn't call myself a pessimist. I am perhaps not even skeptical, because although I completely disagree with Professor Hartman said about the effect of using digital technology, I agree with one point, that it really works.
use of smartphones and computers and internet and mobile telephones really works and really influences our brain, but the way it influences even changes the structure of our brain, which has been found by many studies, is very complicated. There are good consequences and bad consequences, and if I focus today on bad, as far as I can see, consequences, it's not because I want to suggest humanists in Europe to stop using the internet or smartphones, but so you will realize soon that my approach is not pessimistic at all. I think we can avoid much or many of the negative effects of abuse of internet technologies and smart technologies if we are really aware of what happens, what kind of dangers are there. And to be aware, you need to think and discuss critically the situation. By the way, when I listened to Professor Hartman now, I remembered famous quotation by one of the English writers, I think it was Chesterton, who once said that when people stop believing in God, they will start believing in anything. So we had an example of the new believer in the internet, and I actually, you know, I agree with some points, I disagree with many, but at the moment, what I have in mind is mainly the form, your speech or preachery, you call it. I think you spoke like a preacher from the internet, which is perfectly okay, of course, but I will speak in a slightly different way, not that pessimistic at all. Although I will start from something which may sound or look like pessimistic, I'm speaking to humanists, and I planned this panel 3 years ago, actually, or 2 years ago maybe, as inspiration for humanists to rethink the possible consequences of this digital revolution and to perhaps draw some conclusions. And I would like to start this part of my talk from the story about humanist conferences I was involved in or organized. The first time I organized that kind of conference, co-organized, in Warsaw in 1996. At that time we had 2 days full of speeches and talks and discussions and so on. We published a post-conference book which contained 12 keynote speeches only. So we had altogether, as I say, 2 full days of conference in discussions and everything. 6 years later, in 2002, there was another conference in Warsaw, in Polish Parliament. It was 10th anniversary of European Federation, and at that time we had 1 day of conferencing and 2 hours the second day. Now, 21 years later, we have half a day of conference, 4 panels. 4 panels during the first conference took about half a day, and we have many more other activities, which is fine. I'm especially happy about the next trip, but I started to think what's happening. And I'm not suggesting that we became so stupid or idiots that we just can't stand conferencing for a longer time, although I disagree with this point again. There have been many studies made in Western world, including Australia, which in cultural and political sense belongs to the West, which showed that over the last decades people became less intelligent. For various reasons, not only digital abuse, let's say, of digital technologies, but for many reasons. I will not go into details because it's a very long story. To sort of confirm this general evaluation of the situation, I will tell you that even Tom, just forgotten the name of the psychologist who was well known, Tom Flynn, in the 80s he made huge studies and wrote a book in which he claimed that people become more and more intelligent from generation to generation, in the early 80s. Now the same man says that he was wrong, that at that time he didn't take into consideration the fact that the quality of the education since the beginning since the 50s and 60s and 70s was much higher, according to him, than the quality of the education before. So the results he got at that time were mainly the consequence of the high quality of the education. But now he says that since about the 80s, of course these are long processes and take different time in different countries and a different form also, but since then the general IQ of people in the Western countries, I'm not speaking about Africa or Asia, is falling, sometimes slowly, generally over the last 20, 30 years by 1 or 1.5% generally, but much stronger fall has been observed among youth. There are many studies, the results are different, so I will not give you any numbers because, as I said, there are many results. But actually all of the studies confirm that general average IQ is falling. Not only because of digital technologies and the use of them, but also. Why? It has been found also by many other studies that about the consequences of digital technology, not necessarily that people become less intelligent or less wise, but mainly that people become less willing to think. The way internet influences our brain, our cognitive abilities and our personality, because this is nothing influences only brain. The influence is, let's say in a religious way, holistic or total. So the way it works, first it was really studied in the 90s and put into the book by Italian political scientist, mostly Giovanni Sartori, who published a book called Homo Videns and Television and Post-Thinking. And the book is large, there are very many plots, but perhaps the main idea of the book is that at the moment that the shift from the text to picture produces the effect of this shift, which he observed mainly on the basis of television, but later also on the internet, makes people less willing to fill in abstract terms. First of all, less willing. People just reject abstract ideas like freedom, equality, any abstract ideas, but to me, as a humanist of some left liberal orientation, it is important that they just... Some people say that they are not able to think in abstract terms. This is not quite clear, but certainly they are less willing, and if they are asked, after getting some tasks which are either focus on vision or focus on text, those who are focused on vision speak about their experience. The studies were very different, so I'm using this general description. They don't use abstract terms, and the study was repeated many times after some time, and if this kind of experience lasts for a long time, or if it's repeated, the effect is quite durable, let's say. So Mr. Sartori, who is considered probably the first who found that kind of effect, even said, and he is famous for that he announced the death of Homo sapiens and the birth of Homo Videns. And the bad consequence is not only this disability or lack of willingness or desire to think in abstract terms, but also he found, as a political scientist, that very bad and dangerous consequences for the quality of democracy. It's... Sorry? So I am not going to develop this particular plot because I want to focus on the consequences, negative consequences for our thinking, or ability or willingness to think. But the problem is not only related with the fact that we have shifted from text to pictures, because internet is also text, although less and less. Even 2 days ago here at this conference, when somebody was presenting a new website of the European Humanist Federation, we could see huge picture of I don't know what, but it was professional agency which prepared this design, so obviously they sell things. So if we apply this project, it's nice, of course. We will put ourselves into the shoes of sellers, let's say. So we have a large picture and very short information about humanism. I can't remember who was presenting this, it was Mark, I think. And he repeated twice or three times that information about, written information about humanism is very short. So the shift is obvious, and it is very well known really that the picture plays more and more, the role of picture in the internet or on the internet is more and more important. But other thinkers or scientists like Manfred Spitzer, German psychiatrist actually, but who is very much interested in politics and society, he wrote a book called Digital Dementia, or American intellectual writer Nicholas Carr, who wrote a book in English. It has the title Shallows. In Polish it's Shallow Thinking. They have found, Mr. Spitzer himself, because he conducted many studies himself, Mr. Carr quotes many other scientists, that even the way the text is provided on the internet is very harmful to our intellectual qualities. For various reasons, it was studied in details, and for example, the fact in those studies, the scientists, psychologists, or people from similar fields studied the behavior of people who use internet and television, because sometimes, actually mostly, those who use more internet or very much internet also watch or listen to television. They do it at the same time. It's one of the reasons that generally, Mr. Spitzer especially, found that those who abuse internet and television involve in something he's calling multitasking, so doing lots of things at the same time. This distracts thinking very much, and the consequences have been studied. For example, people do not remember almost anything from what they read, or remember less. If they read now the text on the internet, at the same time listen to the music and watch TV or listen to TV, or they are distracted by links, because one of the problems with text on the internet found mainly and emphasized by Nicholas Carr, American intellectual, is the fact that links and other elements, also pictures and everything what is on the website or on the smartphone, distracts people very often, and they do not read the text in what Erich Fromm once called the mode of existence. That was the name he used. So they do not read attentively, they do not read deeply, they do not really try to get into dialogue with the author inside. They got distracted all the time, and the effect is what I have already said on the basis of Mr. Spitzer, but and also Nicholas Carr. The effect is that they think in a shallow way. When you ask them, after reading for a long time on the internet, to summarize what they have read, they use very short sentences, very superficial description, and they miss a lot of information. If you do the same with the text on the book, their report after the study is much fuller. Sentences use many more sophisticated words, they are more abstract, and so on and so on. So all this, in my opinion, proves, or at least should encourage us to, this is in line with what you have said, more scientifically, I would say. I think it doesn't mean all this that we shouldn't use the internet, but I think that, for example, the information on the front page, or new page of the European Humanist Federation should focus on text. rather than on picture. And, well, this is just one example, but that's the way I think we could, we really could take into account the conclusions from that kind of studies. Of course, we need to study it more, perhaps organize a conference devoted only to specific aspects of all these studies, because there are numerous studies. Perhaps we can, of course, invite believers in the internet to have discussions, but I think we should mainly base our strategy for the future on the basis of studies rather than talks just. And not in order not to remove internet or abolish the internet or smartphones, but in order to rethink the way we approach it. Whether we, for example, should use the advices of business people and follow their way of thinking, which is obviously strongly influenced by what I am thinking about, and maybe it's very right for people who just sell goods. Do we sell goods? In a way, perhaps yes, but perhaps the goods we sell are of a very special character, which really need to apply or to use another method of sale, because otherwise we may end up with our humanism, atheism, as the Czech atheists ended up, let's say, not ended yet, but at the moment. And what I want to say is something which shocked me several years ago, when I believed that atheism brings automatically wisdom, liberty, the tendency to think philosophically and consider everything, and all aspects should be taken into account, and so on and so on, that societies will become more free and rational. But it turned out in the studies conducted several times in the Czech Republic that although really Czechs are the most atheistic, but at the same time they are the most superstitious society in Europe. Actually 50% of Czechs pay for the services of astrologers, clairvoyants and so on. They are worse than people in Bavaria, who are the second most superstitious. And the reason, probably, there are many theories about both Czech atheism and the fact they are so superstitious, but one of the reasons, at least I think, is that the way they became atheists is not what I would recommend to atheists, to humanists, especially humanist atheists today. They became atheists for historical and political reasons, not because they met for many years and discussed everything in full. So the result is a bit hopeless. It's not even obvious to me whether it is for good or for worse. It's a very complex issue again. So that's my message. Is it so optimistic? I just encourage us to reconsider the results.
I do wish to see someone try to abolish internet. I did promise people a chance to say something from the floor, so I will accept now 5 questions or comments, and after that there will be a very short time for the 3 of you to answer. So I'm sorry there will not be enough time for sure for everyone. Please stand up and say your name.
My name is Hassan. I'm from Morocco and I live in Switzerland. I think I try to be very short. I think there are 2 major revolutions in the history. The first one is the Gutenberg revolution, with his magical machine and the spread of ideas and the boost of not only enlightenment ideas, but also counter-enlightenment. The second one is the Zuckerberg revolution. And I see that in my country, in my region, I see how the internet is making young people smarter and is emancipating them to overcome censorship, and I have seen also how the internet helped people to read Kant and Marx and Nietzsche, and there has been nowadays no differences, I believe, with someone growing up in Morocco from a very poor family compared to someone who is in Berlin or Paris, when in fact in the past, without the internet, without this globalized tool, we were kind of only the middle class or the upper class had the chance to go study in the Sorbonne or Oxford and be enlightened and be challenged with new ideas. So I believe we should encourage the use of internet. We are humans, we evolve, and we will evolve ways how also to overcome or to tackle the problems of maybe the overuse or whatever that could. So we will adapt to it. It's a new phenomenon, we will adapt to it, and it's really a gift to our generation. Thank you.
My name is Maciej. A few comments to what Professor Hartman has said. Professor Hartman presented a really optimistic view of the future, and Andrzej Dominiczak quipped that he is a preacher of the future and technology. I must say that I'm leaning towards approach presented by Professor Dołowy, which I don't think is pessimistic. I think it's just rational, because there wasn't really anything pessimistic in what I've heard. And thank you very much, Professor. More specifically, Professor Hartman has said that one has to be very stupid. One has to be very stupid not to distinguish the truth from the lies, and I completely disagree with this. Because right now we have a huge problem with what is called post-truth, and as you know, the post-truth is the word of 2016 in the USA, and it's a common problem, widespread problem. It's not really easy however, it may be argued that it's easy to distinguish the truth from the lies in some certain blatant lies. Like that the aliens have visited the Earth yesterday or something like that. It's not really easy to distinguish to find the post-truth, which is a deliberate lies in order to spread the political agenda or something like that. And currently, the United Kingdom government is really concerned about that, and there is a pressure on the social media to combat the post-truth. And a lot of fake profiles have been removed from the Facebook recently. There was nearly an incident between, or a diplomatic scandal between India and Pakistan a couple of weeks ago, when Minister of Defense of Pakistan had read fake news that India is getting ready to go to the war with them. So that is really a course of the 21st century, and I disagree that this is fairly easy to distinguish between both of them. Thank you.
Yes, I'm Mark Sonier. I work for the EHF Secretariat. Well, I will not address the question of the EHF website, as you know that this was a mock-up, which is not finished yet, but I invite you to browse through it once all the text will be there. I think that one point that is particularly missing in this panel is education. I think education is absolutely fundamental. Every time you had a kind of new revolution that had changed the face of the world, we were looking to education to equip the citizens to become full participants of the society. Well, I think, once more, this is the case. We are in a transition where these things already happen, but our education has not caught up with it. But we have to teach our new citizens to be able to search properly on the internet, to distinguish lies from truth, etc. And it will come. But negating the obvious advantages also that digital technologies have brought in terms of creativity, user-generated content. 12, 10-year-old kids who put up amazing content on YouTube, on Facebook, etc. Or entire protests which happen just because of the existence of Facebook. I think this is too reductionist. So I would invite you to think about education as a way to address the challenges while allowing society to benefit from the opportunities.
I'm very interested in how new technologies influence both individuals and groups, and I would like to hear from you what would be the difference between those two, and if the impact is positive or negative or both. Thank you.
Thank you, David Pollock. I'm by nature an optimist, and we clearly cannot forego all the great excitement of this sort of technology, but no one has yet talked about the malevolent use of it. It's been assumed that the internet is neutral or entirely benevolent to our interests. What the internet allows is people to live in echo chambers, in silos, where they only hear and find views that agree with their own views. And this can become intensified as they inhabit those silos. So that, for example, no, sorry, I've got no time to go into examples. Moreover, the internet works through search algorithms, and the result of this is that they can be manipulated, and it's recently been discovered in Britain that Google, if you search for the Holocaust, produces at the top of its list a number of Holocaust denial websites, because these have been manipulated into that position by people who are interested to promote their own views. Not only that, fake news is a commercial interest for people. There are people who are employed to create fake news simply to create headlines that might attract people to click to go through to a site so as to attract people to advertising that is there. But this fake news can be grossly misleading. And lastly, in the same light, people talked about the benevolence of Facebook, but on Facebook people reveal huge amounts of information about themselves. The Facebook model is based entirely on analysing that so that advertisers can direct their advertisements direct to the people. For example, girls who have revealed that they're about to get married and who live in a certain area and who are in a certain income bracket. This whole list of analysis lies behind the Facebook commercial model, and that has been now exploited by politicians and lay behind, there's very good reason to believe, lay behind Donald Trump's success in the American election by directing fake news to people who are susceptible to it. And it's been suggested also behind the Brexit campaign, where the vast bulk of the spending by the Labour Brexit campaigners went to two linked companies who were using technology software owned by Robert Mercer, who was a close associate of Steve Bannon. And the whole situation, I think, is extremely alarming. My message is not we need to abandon it. My message is we must control it. We must have rules enforced by governments.
And the last person.
Króciutko po polsku. Monika Szymańska, Kraków. Chciałam także odnieść się do wypowiedzi profesora Hartmana, która była mocno prowokująca i stworzyła taką przestrzeń na nasze myśli na ten temat, do czego zmierzamy. Oczywiście bardzo ciekawy jest problem, co będzie, jeżeli stworzymy sztuczną inteligencję, która nas przewyższa i na dodatek etyczną. Nasz gatunek wtedy będzie istniał, ale jako psycholożka wypowiem się na inny temat. Mianowicie podzielam bardziej poglądy pana profesora Dołowego oraz Andrzeja Dominiczaka, żeby być bardzo ostrożnym, ponieważ pan profesor przedstawił ofertę tak naprawdę dla elity, nie dla całego społeczeństwa. Krytyczne myślenie to nie tylko przeszukiwanie, operowanie informacjami, ale dla mnie, ze względu na mój zawód, także krytyczne myślenie dotyczące tego, czym jesteśmy jako jednostki, czyli dotyczące wnętrza człowieka, dotyczące tego, na ile mamy samoświadomość własnych emocji, mechanizmów, które nami rządzą, czy też postępowania etycznego. I tutaj uważam, że internet, czy w ogóle technologie nie zaspokajają potrzeby naszego gatunku na takie ukierunkowanie krytycznego myślenia na nas. Zwróciłabym też uwagę na etyczność biznesu, nauki i biznesu w konsekwencji w rozpowszechnianiu technologii dla społeczeństwa. To jest niepokojące. Dziękuję.
Thank you. So we had a number of comments and one actual question from the lady in the first row. So if you could all take 2 minutes to reply, 3 minutes max to reply to a selected comment or question, please.
Well, sure. Emancipatory power of the internet and social media are just beyond discussion. And we should be very serious about that. The world is changing in political sense too, because of Zuckerberg's revolution. I'm not a preacher okay, this way. I'm not a preacher of the internet. I'm just a witness of what is going on, and I'm really taken. It's really amazing what is happening, and this is just the feeling of someone who is a witness of something revolutionary, and I think it's quite a natural attitude. Education is a crucial point. People must be taught how to use internet, how to search, how to select information, how to criticize information, but it is possible. It is still possible. Now our power to select information and to identify fake information is much stronger than before. In pre-digital era, we were completely unable to challenge what our teachers told us. It's right, the internet, just the internet, which provides us with tools to select and verify, justify information we get. And of course we are isolated to some extent in our niches, in our small social groups, consisting of people representing similar lifestyles and views. But we have much more chances than before to go out. We have ever been isolated in small groups. Now these small groups are much bigger and much more open. And this is the answer also to your question. Of course, the impact of the internet on our personal life is part of the whole phenomenon, and the impact of our social life is another part. But then there is an interrelation between both ways the internet influences us. So we now, however, we live in small groups, as we have always done. We have much more friends. We are much more social. We are much more socialized than before. We meet more people in the real world because of being in the net for many hours a day. Our social life and our spiritual internal life are both enriched by the use of digital technologies. What about critical thinking and ethics, ethical attitudes? Of course, we have more good examples of what does it mean to be critical, of what does it mean to be ethical, of what are ethical problems of the social life, because we just see more of the world. So internet makes us much more autonomous, much more resonate, clever persons than we used to be 20, 30, 40 years ago. I am much more clever than being 25 years ago, and I'm happy with that. And the reason why it's so, it's the internet mostly. Thanks.
Okay, some people thought that I am against internet or something like that. It is revolution which will be with us all the time. So I was only telling that internet increases some dangers which David was telling, the false information. The internet starts to control you. If you get all the information about you, I mean some companies getting all the information about you, it could manipulate you. If somebody cannot see it, it is very bad. It is a beginning of, I agree with you, education. Now, philosophy is characteristic for that have the different views on the same problem. It depends on philosopher. Now, hard science get out from philosophy department because they have too many problems with themselves. Now, hard science have hard answers, and if we are talking not in words but in facts, so vaccination problem. There was some fool guy who wanted to be famous, and he cheated on his experiment. Now there is a 10 or 20% of people who are not vaccinating their own children. I mean, they want to kill them, really, because if the plague would come, they would die. Not only them, there are other young newborns which have no their own ability to fight this virus. They will also die. So it is a dangerous movement. Okay, guy said, okay, I was wrong, I'm not wrong, I falsified experimental result. But it is on the internet all the time. Now, there must be a way, maybe in the future, to get rid of such a fake news or false information. If not, there is a plenty of it. And another example. Everybody seems to know everything about diet. Now, this is a problem of physiology of human beings. It is not that you can invite diet and be safe with it. Now, if you open in internet, there are hundreds of different diets. Half of them are really make you thick. Now, before internet, very rarely we could find anorexia. Now, approximately 1 in 10,000 women are dying of anorexia. It is mental disease caused by information that she is too fat because she is 30 kilograms, so too fat. This is internet would increase that problem. And so finally, I agree with that we should teach people how to recognize between good and bad, between false and true, between different point of view on the same subject. It is very good, philosophy is very good in it, especially if we started very young, not in old ages. But another problem, which also David was saying, we are starting to live in our own information sphere. We have no contacts with other human beings. We think that everything in our group, everybody has the same opinion. That is probably true, but there are different groups about which we do not know. Something must be done to make internet safer and not to make so much harm as it's doing now.
Thank you. First, I would like to address the question not in full, because I can't remember everything I've been thinking about. Various points made by difference. But since you started your question from saying that I am interested in whatever it was, I'm very happy to hear that someone is interested in the subject of our panel. So I would like to give you at least one of these books because I have many copies. So you will find a lot of real specialized information about the subject. Maybe if you repeat your question, we'll try to answer it, but at least I can give you this book. Adding a little bit to what Professor Dołowy has just said, I would like to mention, and in reaction also partly to what Professor Hartman said about friends on the internet, and we have so many friends and we contact with them. I have actually 5,000 friends now on Facebook, and I know perhaps 10% of them, and it wouldn't be a problem, but perhaps 300 or 500 of them are decided to be my friends and invited me because they are more or less either from church circles or fascist circles, and their main activity is hate speech, of course. I am not sure how it is in Western countries, but in Poland hate speech is really very serious problem, and there are many reasons it develops. There are many subtle psychological reasons people get angry more easily while communicating on the internet. It's not only fascists who just want to, who just fight with me or against me, rather, but there are some, as I said, subtle reasons. There were studies made already 15 years ago or something like that, and scientists compared the number of conflicts and gravity of conflicts if people in business, the study was made in business circles, if people communicate and discuss